While helping my aunt move, I found a box marked "Do Not Open." Inside, my childhood drawings, and a letter from my birth mother they'd hidden from me for 20 years. Hey there. We're working hard to hit our first 1,000 subscribers. If you love true, emotional stories, hit that subscribe button. It helps more than you know. Now let's get into the story. I was just helping my aunt pack boxes when my entire childhood came undone. Literally. We were in her attic, sweating through layers of dust, cobwebs, and broken down furniture. She was downsizing, moving into a condo, and asked if I could help carry down anything heavy. I figured I'd be moving old photo albums, spare chairs, maybe a box of ancient Christmas lights. Nothing dramatic. Then I found the box. It was shoved behind a dresser with a blanket half covering it, like someone had tried to hide it, but gave up halfway. A regular cardboard box, sealed tight, but across the top, in thick red Sharpie, were the words, "Do not open." Naturally, I opened it. At first, it looked harmless. Just a stack of old papers, some faded construction paper with drawings on them. I assumed it was junk from one of my cousins. Marlene has a few nieces and nephews she helps out with from time to time. But then I saw one of the drawings. It was a crayon picture of a boy with black hair and glasses, just like mine when I was 5, holding hands with a woman in a green dress. The caption read, "Me and Mommy." My heart stopped for a second. The handwriting was clumsy but familiar. I picked up another drawing. This one had a little boy playing with a blue bunny plush. That exact toy sat on a shelf in my bedroom until I was 13. Same shape, same tear in the year. Another picture. Then another. Then the letter, tucked between 2 sheets of paper, in a soft blue envelope. Faded around the edges, but clearly well-preserved. On the front, to Kyle, on his 5th birthday. Love, Mom. That's my name, Kyle. But that handwriting, it didn't match anything I knew. My mom, well, the woman I've always called Mom, has very loopy cursive. This was small, tight, almost formal. I froze, just stared at it for a long moment. That's when Marlene came up the attic steps. She was wiping her hands on a dish towel and chatting like nothing was wrong. When she saw me holding the letter, everything changed. Her smile dropped. The color drained from her face. Her voice cracked when she said, "Kyle, where did you find that?" I held up the box. "It was back there. Says, 'Do not open.'" "What is this?" She looked like I had just pulled a grenade pin. That wasn't meant for you to see." I opened the envelope anyway. The letter was dated the day of my 5th birthday. The handwriting was shaky but careful. It began, "My sweet Kyle, if you're reading this, I hope it means you're safe, that you're happy, that maybe someone kind raised you well." I sat down right there on the attic floor. My hands were shaking. I read the whole thing while Marlene stood 5 feet away, silent. The letter told me things no one else could have known. It mentioned the song I used to fall asleep to, "You Are My Sunshine." It mentioned my favorite food at age 4, carrot sticks with honey, gross now, but I was obsessed with it back then. It mentioned how I used to call the moon the night light. No one knew these things. Not unless they'd been there. And the woman who raised me? She never talked about stuff from when I was that young. Said she didn't remember much. The letter ended with, "I'm sorry I wasn't there for your birthday. I didn't want to leave. I fought to stay. I'll always love you. I'll always be your mother. Anna." Anna. I had never heard that name in my life. When I looked up, Marlene was crying. Not full sobbing. More like she knew the dam was about to break, and she was trying to keep it together. "Kyle," she said quietly, "I think we need to talk." I didn't speak. I just kept staring at the letter. Because deep down, I already knew the truth. This woman, Anna, she was my birth mother. And for 20 years, someone had made damn sure I never found out. We sat downstairs at her kitchen table. The attic air still clung to my clothes. Heavy, stale, making it hard to breathe. Marlene poured herself a cup of coffee, but her hands were trembling so much she barely got the sugar in without spilling it everywhere. I didn't say anything. I just laid the letter down between us, flat on the table, and waited. She stared at it like it might catch fire. Finally, after what felt like an hour, she said, "You weren't supposed to find that." Her voice was small, tired. I stayed quiet. If I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure what would come out, and part of me didn't trust what I might say. So she started talking. You were brought into the family when you were little," she said. "Greg, your father, he had been with a woman before. It was messy. She wasn't stable. Everyone agreed it was better for you to stay with us." I leaned forward. Everyone agreed? Like who? Marlene didn't answer, just rubbed her temples and sighed. I pressed. "Who is Anna?" Her hands shook harder. "Anna, she's your real mother." The room swayed a little bit. Not literally, but it felt like it. Like the ground under me was cracking and I just hadn't fallen through yet. "She left you," Marlene said quickly, almost desperately. "She couldn't handle being a mother. She ran off. Your father picked up the pieces. We raised you right." I looked back at the letter. The careful handwriting. The little details no stranger could ever guess. She didn't leave me, I said, voice flat. She wrote me. She wanted to confuse you. Marlene snapped, losing her patience. You were just a child. You wouldn't have understood. We protected you. Protected. That word sat bitter in my mouth. Protected me by lying to my face for 20 years. Protected me by erasing an entire human being from my life. Protected me by changing my name, my history, my truth. Marlene must have seen the look in my eyes, because she softened again. Kyle, honey, it's complicated. You had a good life, didn't you? You were loved. I stood up. I had a life built on a lie. She flinched like I hit her. I didn't care. I turned and started towards the door. Kyle, wait. Please. I turned back once. I needed her to see it. The disbelief, the betrayal. Who else knew? I asked. Greg? My mom? Everyone. She hesitated too long. Everyone, I said bitterly. Everyone but me. Her shoulders collapsed inward. I left. I sat in my car for a long time after that. The letter was on the passenger seat, open, fluttering slightly in the AC breeze. I kept reading one line over and over. I'll always love you. I'll always be your mother. The woman who raised me had never said anything like that. Not once. And for the first time in my life, I started to wonder if maybe the wrong woman had been holding my hand all those years. Or worse, if she hadn't been holding it at all. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that blue envelope again. To my son, on his 5th birthday. A tiny piece of paper had cracked open everything I thought I knew about myself. By morning, I was angry. Not just confused, not just hurt, angry. I wasn't a kid anymore. I could get answers without asking permission. So the first thing I did was drive down to the county clerk's office. I figured it was simple. If I was adopted, there'd be records. Custody papers, name change forms, something official. They keep that stuff, right? It's not like you can just steal a kid and hope nobody notices. I took a number, waited an hour, then sat across from a clerk who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I gave her my name, my birth date, my parents' names. Told her I wanted to request a copy of my adoption file. She typed for a few minutes, squinting at the screen. Then she frowned. I'm not seeing any adoption paperwork here, she said. I leaned forward. Are you sure? She turned the screen toward me. Blank fields. No results. If you were legally adopted in this county, she said, there would be a record. Maybe it happened somewhere else. Could there be a mistake? I asked. She shrugged. You could try requesting a full birth certificate. But if there's no adoption paperwork, the birth certificate should still list your biological parents. I left the office with a sick feeling in my stomach. It got worse when the birth certificate arrived a few days later. Name, Kyle Thomas Reynolds. Mother, Anna Reynolds. Father, blank. No mention of Greg. No mention of the woman who raised me. The legal document said I belonged to Anna. And only Anna. My entire life had been a patch job. A cover-up. And nobody ever bothered to make it official because they didn't think I'd ever find out. I sat on my couch, birth certificate in one hand, the old letter in the other, and realized something horrifying. If there was no adoption, no paperwork, then legally, Greg wasn't my father. Which meant, I didn't know him anything. Not the college loans he co-signed, but made me pay back. Not the credit cards he opened in my name when I was 18. Not the medical debt collectors who'd been harassing me for months about his unpaid surgeries. I owed them nothing. And he, the man who used me like a crutch for 26 years, wasn't my family at all. For the first time since opening that damn box, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile you make when you realize you've been playing a rigged game and finally find the switch to kill the lights. I ordered the DNA kit that same night. Didn't think. Just clicked purchase and sat there staring at the screen until the order confirmation popped up. Spit in a tube. Mail it back. Wait a few weeks. That's all it would take to finally put this whole twisted mess into black and white. While I waited, I started digging deeper. I pulled out old photo albums Marlene had given me when I moved into my first apartment. You know the ones, stiff pages, those sticky plastic covers peeling at the edges. Every birthday, every Christmas, every first day of school photo was in there. I noticed something I had never noticed before. In every picture, Greg's arm was around me. Not under me. Not holding me. Almost like I was someone else's kid. Not once did I see a photo of him picking me up, tossing me on his shoulders, kissing my forehead. There was a distance, even in the old snapshots. It made my skin crawl. I also found an old Gmail account I hadn't touched since high school. I only opened it because I figured maybe I had some baby pictures saved there. Instead, I found something else. Hundreds of unread emails. Most of them labeled as spam, filtered, or blocked. When I opened them, I saw the sender name over and over again, Anna Reynolds. My real mother. Every email was some variation of Please, just let me know he's safe. I don't want to cause trouble, but I miss him. Please, tell him I love him. Most gut-wrenching of all was one from when I was 12. I heard he liked soccer. I hope he knows I used to take him to the park when he was a baby. And every single one of them had been automatically forwarded to Marlene's personal email address. Not mine. Hers. She had intercepted them. Every single one. They hadn't just hidden Anna's existence from me. They had actively silenced her, wiped her voice off the map. By the time the DNA results came back, I wasn't nervous anymore. I was furious, cold, focused. I opened the app and clicked through. The headline hit me like a train. Gregory Reynolds, 0% paternity match. No biological relation. No connection. Just some man who had decided I was easier to keep around than deal with the truth. I printed out the DNA certificate, highlighted the paternity result, and faxed it straight to the hospital billing office that had been hounding me for weeks about Greg's debt. A few hours later, my phone rang. Debt collector, we've updated our records. You are not responsible for the account. We apologize for the error. Just like that. Decades of guilt, obligation, family duty, gone. Because legally, they couldn't tie me to him. Not even with a lie. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because now I had proof. And now, I had a question. If Greg had lied about being my father, what else had they buried? And more importantly, where was Anna now? Finding Anna wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. After everything Marlene had done to erase her, I expected it would take months of dead ends, old addresses, outdated phone numbers. But the letter had one clue. At the very bottom, under her signature, Anna had written, "I'll always be waiting in Chestnut Hollow." Chestnut Hollow was a tiny town 2 states over, barely a dot on the map. I vaguely remembered driving through it once on a school trip. Blink and you'd miss it. So that's where I went. No grand plan. No speech prepared. Just me, my beat-up car, and a crumpled blue envelope sitting in the passenger seat like it was daring me to lose my nerve. When I pulled into town, I stopped at the first diner I saw and asked the waitress if she knew an Anna Reynolds. Her eyes lit up immediately. Sure do. Sweetest woman you'll ever meet. She's the librarian. Of course she was. A woman who wrote letters every year to a son she was forbidden to see. Of course she worked somewhere filled with words. The library was a squat brick building with ivy crawling up the sides. Inside, it smelled like old paper and warm dust. And there, behind the front desk, shelving a stack of books, was a woman with graying brown hair pulled into a loose braid. She was humming softly under her breath, a tune I hadn't heard in 20 years. You are my sunshine. My throat closed up. I walked up slowly, heart hammering so hard it hurt. When she turned and saw me, the books slipped from her hands and scattered across the floor. She didn't say anything at first, just stared. And then, and this I'll remember for the rest of my life, she smiled. Not a big smile. Not a polite one. The kind of smile you only give someone you never thought you'd see again. Kyle, she whispered. I nodded. She covered her mouth with both hands and started to cry. Quiet, stunned tears. I didn't know what to do. I just stood there, letting her look at me, like she was trying to memorize every inch of my face. Eventually, I crouched down and started helping her pick up the books. It was stupid, but it felt like the right thing to do. Like maybe it could undo a little of the time we lost. We spent the next few hours sitting in the back office, away from the patrons. She made tea. I didn't touch mine. I just listened. Anna told me everything. She hadn't left me. Greg had taken me when she was out grocery shopping one afternoon. When she tried to report it, she found out he had a better lawyer, more money, more power in a town where the Reynolds name meant something. She fought. God, she fought. But he made her look unstable, painted her as unfit. And eventually, under pressure, she was told if she kept trying to get me back, things would get messy, custody battles, accusations, maybe even jail time. Out of fear for me, that I'd end up lost in the system if things went nuclear, she stopped fighting legally. But she never stopped writing, never stopped trying to reach me. Every Christmas, every birthday, every time she heard from someone in town that Kyle's growing up so fast, she wrote. She sent emails, letters, packages. Marlene had intercepted all of them. I sat there, letter in my lap, feeling like a stranger in my own story. Anna pulled out a small box from under her desk. Inside were dozens of little mementos, newspaper clippings of school plays I had been in, articles about my soccer team winning tournaments, photos she had managed to get from neighbors. She kept everything. When I finally spoke, all I could manage was, "Why didn't you come find me when I turned 18? Anna smiled sadly. I did. I came back to town. I even went to your graduation. But Marlene told me you didn't want me there, that you were angry with me, that you hated me. I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my palms. All those years, all that bitterness, manufactured. It wasn't her fault. It had never been her fault. That night, I stayed at her house. A little yellow place with creaky floorboards and mismatched furniture. It felt more like home than any place I'd ever lived. And when she hugged me goodbye that next morning, holding me like she was afraid to let go, I knew exactly what my next step was going to be. No more pretending. No more fake families. No more stolen stories. It was time to take my life back. The first thing I did when I got home was file for a legal name change. It wasn't even a question. I was tired of carrying around the last name of a man who wasn't my father. A man who had taken a scared little boy and built a wall of lies around him so tall, he couldn't even see over it. I went back to the name on my real birth certificate. Kyle Thomas Reynolds. Not the Reynolds that Greg had tried to brand me with. The Reynolds that belonged to Anna, my real mother. The court process was surprisingly easy. A few forms, a few signatures, a judge who glanced over the paperwork without a second thought. It was almost insulting how simple it was to erase decades of stolen identity. But I wasn't stopping there. I made copies of everything. The DNA results, the original birth certificate, the adoption file, or rather, the obvious lack of one. And then I wrote 2 letters. One to Greg, one to Marlene. Each letter was short, cold, final. I enclosed the documents. I highlighted the parts that mattered. And at the bottom of each letter, I wrote the same sentence. You don't get to keep what was never yours. I mailed them certified, just to be sure they couldn't pretend they hadn't seen them. Greg tried to call me 3 days later. 6 missed calls. 2 voicemails. I didn't listen to them. Marlene sent an email. The subject line was, "Please talk to me." The body was 1 sentence long. "We only did what was best for you." Best for me? Best for me would have been the truth. Best for me would have been a mother who didn't have to sing lullabies to an empty room every year on my birthday. I archived the email without replying. But Marlene wasn't done. A few weeks later, I started seeing posts pop up on Facebook. Long, rambling statuses about ungrateful children and the sacrifices we make that they never understand. Thinly veiled, passive-aggressive jabs. I ignored them at first. Then, when she tried to post some pity story in the local community group about how her nephew abandoned the family who raised him, I responded once. Just once. I posted screenshots. The DNA results. The emails Anna had sent. The letter from the county clerk saying no adoption was ever filed. I didn't add commentary. No long angry rants. No emotional speeches. Just the facts. The comments flooded in. People who had known us growing up, neighbors, old family friends, were stunned. Some apologized to me directly. Some went after Marlene. Her little campaign for sympathy blew up in her face faster than she could delete the posts. Greg? He stayed silent. Cowered to the end. I heard later through the grapevine that he had to sell his house to pay off his debts. Good. He could have asked his real family for help. Oh wait, they didn't exist. As for me, I kept building a new life. One where I chose who got to be called family. Anna, and I took it slow at first. You can't just rewind 2 decades and pretend nothing happened. But little by little, we carved out something real. Dinners. Phone calls. Stories about childhood, the real ones this time. And on my 27th birthday, she gave me a gift. A scrapbook. It wasn't fancy. Just a bunch of old photos, printouts of the emails she'd try to send, copies of the letters she wrote every year. At the front, she left a note. You may have missed 20 birthdays, but you'll never miss another one. I sat there flipping through the pages, feeling something settle in my chest. Not anger, not bitterness, not sadness. Something quieter, stronger, like a root finally finding soil after years of growing in the dark. People always say family is everything, but I learned something better. Family is who shows up, who stays, who fights for you even when you're too young to know you need fighting for. Family isn't blood. It's love that doesn't ask permission. And for the first time since that dusty afternoon in Marlene's attic, I felt like I belonged somewhere. For real. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.